and welcome. My name is Janet Zander with the Greater Wisconsin Agency on Aging Resources. I'm delighted to be here today as we talk about the 2019 Credit for Caring Act. Joining me here today are members of AARP Wisconsin, the Alzheimer's Association of Wisconsin, who happens to be celebrating or having their State Advocacy Day today, as well as my own organization. Kicking us off this morning will be Representative Skowronski.
Thank you. Thank you. Good morning, everybody. What a wonderful day. Thank you, Janet, from the Greater Milwaukee Agency on Aging Resource. We are here today to announce a reintroduction of the Credit Care Act. The bill would create $1,000 tax credit to help those who act as caregivers and very important family members to help them. Caregivers can be emotional and financial stress for those people. This bill helps some of that financial stress and helps the seniors along with it in their home to stay home in a great and very positive environment. So we're here to support them, and we'll be here to reintroduce this bill to help them along. So thank you. The next person I would like to introduce is Senator.
All right. Well, thank you, Representative Skowronski. We're here today to reintroduce the Credit for Caring Act, and I want to thank Representative Skowronski, Representative Kolste, and Senator Wirch for their support on this important legislation. And our goal for this bill is to achieve two main things. We want to make it easier for people to offer support to their family members who may need more care due to a disability or advanced age. As Helen from AARP will point out shortly, Wisconsin has 578,000 family caregivers who provide $7 billion in care every single year. On average, these family caregivers spend $7,000 in out-of-pocket expenses, and this especially hits low-income and middle-class families. We want to make it easier for seniors who need care to stay in their home. Now, between 2015 and 2040, our population at a 65 or older is going to increase by 72%, and their percentage share of the population is set to increase by 10% throughout the state. To give you an example of how this is going to impact some of our counties, in St. Croix County, the population at a 65 or older is set to increase by 72%, and, is going to more than double in St. Croix County. They're going to see an increase of 126% increase between 2015 and 2040. In Monroe County, a county which I represent, the 65 population or older is set to increase by nearly 75%, and its increase in the percentage share of the population by almost 10%. In Kenosha County, where Senator Wirch is from, their population at 65 or older is also projected to more than double, a 104% increase over the next 25 years. Now, in the next 10 to 15 years, as our baby boomers are set to retire, that is going to put an increased strain and demand on our healthcare system. And with the introduction of this bill, we see this as an opportunity to provide more money on the front end to save more money in the long run. And with that, I want to kick it over to my good friend, Representative Kolste.
Thank you, everyone. This should be a visceral issue to everyone. I had the honor of being present when the Proclamation for Family Caregiving was presented a couple of months ago. And to hear the stories of the providers, their rewards and their sacrifices that they make, we all know people who do that, and we may be providing that care ourselves. In Wisconsin, as Senator Testin said, there are over 500,000 informal caregivers that provide hundreds of millions of hours of care to the most vulnerable populations, that of the disabled and the elderly. This caregiving for the elderly and disabled happens in their homes, where family members help keep them in those homes instead of in nursing facilities, an act that is compassionate and saves future Medicaid dollars. Caregivers provide this care often at great expense to themselves. They spend money to help with direct care expenses, and they also lose their own income and potential wages. This bill adds to ways that we can address the hardship that families caregiving and begins the conversation on the real and realized value to the state because of that care. The conversation should not stop here. In fact, it should only be the beginning of the conversation. We need a frank discussion about family caregiving, its value, and the cost for those cared for and those that are doing the caring. With that said, I just saw that the governor is going to establish a task force on caregiving, and I applaud that. We need to look at both paid and unpaid caregiving. Thank you.
I'm Helen Mark Sticks from AARP Wisconsin, and we have the honor of representing both the caregivers and those in need of care. And today makes an unusual day for me because while the AARP has represented the baby boomers for years and the Generation X's are joining us, I can't say that I often speak for the millennials. The millennials have, 1 in 4 millennials are actually doing caregiving service. So this is really an intergenerational issue. It's an issue that doesn't discriminate against the parties. It doesn't discriminate against socioeconomic class. Most of us have either been caregivers, will be caregivers, or will need care. This is a small step in the financial burden to relieve the financial burden. You know, when Senator Testin was giving his remarks and talked about the number of us older people that are coming, you know, I think we're a great resource, but some of us are going to need help and some of us are going to be the helpers. And having this opportunity to defray some of the expenses that we incur doing those challenges is very important to us. Senator Testin did give all the good AARP statistics about the 578,000 caregivers in Wisconsin. Those aren't all our members, but a large percentage of them are. And so we're very delighted to see this bill reintroduced. We are hopeful that as people become more educated to the issues. I heard several comments about how much this would save on the Medicaid budget, and it will save money on the Medicaid budget in the long run. But for the people I represent, let me tell you, we really want to age in our homes. We want to age in our communities, and to the extent our caregivers can help us remain active participants in the community, we want to do that. And I think this bill is a step in that right direction. So I get the honor of turning over the floor to the reporters so that they can ask questions. And that means not only me, but my fellow presenters. They get the hard questions, I get the easy ones. So questions from the press.
Definition of family, it says that you have to be related, but how closely related does the person have to be in order to claim the credit?
They use the probate charts, so it's grandparents, spouses, children, siblings, nieces, nephews. If you fall anywhere within the line of distribution in probate, you're in.
What's the expected cost, and can someone address, you said this was reintroduced, what happened to the previous?
You can do that.
So I can touch on that. So last session, when we introduced this legislation, we received a fiscal estimate of $173 million. And I think that's one of the reasons why this legislation stalled last session, is because I think some folks within the legislature got a little bit of sticker shock. But my argument is that that $173 million doesn't take into effect the potential cost savings, as Helen mentioned, within the MA budget. So we're hopeful that this session we should be able to get a better fiscal estimate. And one of the reasons why we're doing this today and early on in this session is to build up the momentum for this legislation, because we do see this as a benefit. And as Representative Kolste mentioned, the governor has commissioned a task force to deal with this issue. And so very supportive of that and look forward to working with the governor on that. But we see this as a tool to provide families with the support and care that they desperately need. That was the fiscal that was provided last year. Yeah, and so we'll see. We don't have a fiscal yet for this session, but we'll work with the agencies to hopefully get that out soon.
Well, the other problem with the fiscal last year is it was done in haste, and I think several things weren't taken into account that need to be taken into account. Number one, in order to get the credit, you have to have a tax liability. This is a non-refundable credit, so I don't think that was taken into effect. I presume with the rules of taxation that the whole question, if you're claiming someone as a dependent, how does that overlap with this, was never discussed. There's an exclusion in this bill for people that are receiving, that have those services covered by things such as insurance or being a member of a program, a governmental program that would cover some of these things. So when I read the fiscal estimate last year, I had a lot to object to, but the time wasn't there. So I am sure that working with the Senator's office and working with the Revenue Bureau, that our estimate is going to be significantly lower, actually. I also have to say there's a little part of me that says Senator Testin's argument is more long-ranging than mine, because he saves a lot more money in the long run, because sometimes in the budget process we tend to think down the road, and there really is a significant savings to keeping people in their homes or even delaying them for a year or two.
Anybody else? Next questions. Great. We thank you very much.
Thank you.
We answered all your questions, didn't we?